Hi everyone, this is Samantha Wolfe bringing to you my student data for our discussion post number 7, I believe, for module number 8. Hopefully I have that correct. But coming to you with some reading data for my students. So this doesn't directly align with my students and what I'm studying, which is their speaking ability, because I do have a lot of ESL students, but this affects their reading and they are speaking when they're taking the test. So I have the way that my students are identified, which is a randomized number, and then I also have some scores. So this is from the Acadience, or what used to be known as Dibble's reading assessment. So what happens is my students get 1 minute to read nonsense words at the beginning of year. So if you see the acronym BOY, it stands for beginning of year, for the beginning of year assessment. If you see PM, it stands for progress monitoring, and then I have the number 1 behind them for the first progress monitoring of the year. From there, it breaks down even further. So when we're looking at ORF, it stands for oral reading fluency. So students have 1 minute to read a passage. They read as many words as they can. They can be given a word after 3 seconds of struggling. And students are then expected to retell depending on how many words they read. They also are tested at the beginning of the year in 2nd grade in nonsense word fluency. So nonsense word fluency helps us when we get to multisyllabic words and reading those words, so like breaking them down into the pieces of the word. Within nonsense word fluency, then we have 2 different sections. We have correct letter sounds, and then we also have their whole words read. So taking a word like NIF, N-I-F, and reading the word NIF correctly, instead of blending it together or sounding it out, going if, saying the whole word counts as a whole word read. So those are the beginning of year assessments. Once we get into progress monitoring, my students are progress monitored on correct letter sounds. If you see blanks, like these few students here, they do not have to be progress monitored on nonsense word fluency because they've already reached where they should be for their reading in ORF, or they've reached benchmark in nonsense word fluency. Once we reach our mid-year testing, nonsense word fluency is no longer assessed, so then we will just focus on oral reading fluency or reading as much as they can in 1 minute. So that's a little bit of background on the test. From there, I compiled my students' data, and you'll see a lot of different colors. So the colors throughout the chart and the graph, well, it's not really a graph, but the chart show whether they are below level, well below level, on level, or above level. So at the beginning of year, correct letter sounds, we want students to have 54 correct letter sounds. So if I'm looking at this column, I can sort this column, so I can change how the chart is organized, and I can focus on just this column. And I can see that these students only have 3 correct letter sounds. So I would want to go in and I would want to teach them and make sure that they are aware of all the correct letter sounds in the entire alphabet, and also kind of work on that letter ID because that leads to writing. But you can see some of my students are very well above that level. This goes hand in hand with that nonsense word fluency. They don't know the correct letter sounds. Their whole words read are going to be less, possibly a 0, because if they don't know the sounds, they can't put them together to read the word. So again, our goal here for the beginning of the year is 13 words. So red is well below. The yellow is like approaching, green is on level, blue is exceeding. When we're looking at ORF, I can also set that one up. So I set it up so the greatest reader that I have is reading 114 words a minute, and this was given in September. And then my second highest reader is reading 75 words a minute. This child actually moved, so that's why there is no data for the progress monitoring. I can then take this data and I can look at their progress monitoring rates. So they are given an assessment for progress monitoring that is the same style assessment, but it is different nonsense words or different fluency passages that are on a second grade or first grade level, depending upon where they are testing for nonsense word fluency and oral reading fluency. So you can see from the correct letter sounds from the beginning of year, let me just hide my columns here, and I can actually go in here and look and see how many of my students moved from being below level to now being on level. So that shows that the interventions that I am putting in place in my classroom, my students being in class and working hard in class, they are gaining their correct letter sounds, which is what we want to see, positive movement. And then also I can look at their whole words read, so I can hide my correct letter sounds and my other ORF column and compare just those two columns. So here I have a student who went from 0 whole words read to 20 whole words read, so it looks like they just needed a reminder on how to take the test. And like here's a student who went from very close to being on level, now they're on level. So very positive movement for what we want to see. I can also then sort this by looking at my oral reading fluencies. So I'm just going to go back and hide this column. And you can tell this child went up drastically with their reading, over 30 words a minute. This child also went up. This is close to the end of year goal for second grade. So I have some readers in my classroom. I'm very excited to have readers in my classroom because it's helping in content areas like math. Because now I have students who can help to read problems, and I can partner them heterogeneously, where I can take a student that is reading also with a student that is not a reader, and they can help each other out and try and explain things verbally, also developing their speaking skills. So there's a little bit of background. I am going to post like a screenshot of just all of my data like this, and I hope that you all have a great week.